This is Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor. It's a very special day when I have two co-hosts with me, Maritza and Xander. And guess what? I think some of you really like those days when our producer, Mercedes, is out because it gets a little wacky. This is one of those days. Mercedes is out, which means who knows what's going to happen. But at the controls is our remarkable summer fellow, Megan. So, Megan, you got this. And if you don't, it's fun anyway. Welcome to Defiance Daily. Great to be with you, friends. Maritza, great to see you. It's been a beat since we've been on together.
Hey, yeah, great to see you, Miles. Thanks for letting me join the party. And yeah, Mercedes is out. Who's going to rein us in?
I don't know.
No
Megan
one. It's chaos.
Yet feels
chaos
confident enough to tell us that we're screwing up. So that means we get to do whatever we want today.
Party. Let's party.
Party on.
Let me say this to folks. And Maritza, I was sad that you weren't with us yesterday on our weekly mission brief. I know you and I talked a little bit about the Epstein bookmobile, but it was such an exciting announcement. I'll tell you, Xander and I went to dinner afterwards, and we were just talking about how moments like last night are why we feel very proud to be in this fight. And for anyone who missed it, we announced something at defiance.org/bookmobile. You might say, bookmobile. Yes. Go check out defiance.org/bookmobile because we announced our biggest grant yet, a commitment of $100,000 to retrofit a box truck to get out there on the road to take the Epstein files across the country. And we're launching a campaign to get those visits, those stops, the operation of the truck funded. And we're doing that with our friends at the Trumpsonian. But anyway, I thought of you, Maritza, because it was such a powerful moment and a reminder that sort of crowdsourcing courage is working. It's working. And
well, I know I wasn't here with you when you announced, but I was watching. I was on. I'm hurt you didn't see our name pop up in the viewership, Miles, because I was watching and I saw it and I thought $100,000. That's incredible. That's incredible.
It's
Miles,
cool. We're excited.
Missed opportunity to present the grant like Trump, the biggest ever. You've got a much better Trump impersonation than me.
Yours kind of sounded like Schwarzenegger.
Mine gets real German. I get real German.
Who said you could eat my cookies? Sarah Connor.
Look, I never said it was my strength.
That's right. All right. See, it's already gone off the rails. This would be the point where Mercedes in the green room down there in the box would be like, get to the script. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot of things have been happening this week. Look, I know folks are beaten down by the corruption we've seen from the Trump administration, not just the ballroom, not just the exemption from the rule of law, but the slush fund, and it goes on and on. But there has been pushback, and we're going to be talking about some of that pushback today on a number of these different issues that have popped up. But Maritza, why don't you take us to our first story today, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so we're going to start tonight by making another stop on the Trump revenge tour. This is a long journey, folks. This is a very long journey. Yesterday, the Department of Justice announced felony charges against Carmen Lineberger, the former managing assistant U.S. attorney in Fort Pierce, Florida. And she worked on Jack Smith's Mar-a-Lago documents case. You remember that case with the classified documents and the pictures of them in the bathroom. Well, she is now facing 2 felony counts and 2 misdemeanors, including 2 counts of theft of government property, 1 count of altering records, 1 count of concealment or removal of public records. And here's what those charges are built on, folks. The DOJ alleges that in December of last year, Lineberger took a copy of Jack Smith's sealed report off of her DOJ computer, renamed the file buntcakerecipe.pdf, and emailed it from her work account to her own personal Gmail. She now faces up to 20 years in federal prison. So I want everyone here watching to understand exactly what the Justice Department is criminalizing here. The theft is that she emailed her work account from her work account to her personal account. And the concealment is that she renamed that file before sending it. So to be clear, This is relatively common policy violation. I think a lot of people can relate to this kind of thing. Federal prosecutors and DOJ staff have done versions of this many, many times. And when it happens, it is handled internally. People are investigated. Some are disciplined. Some are fired. They are not charged with felonies, and they are not threatened with 20 years in federal prison. And if you want to understand just how upside down this is, consider the contrast. Remember, we were talking about that Mar-a-Lago bathroom. Donald Trump was charged in this exact same district for actively retaining hundreds of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, including documents on nuclear weapons and the defense capabilities of foreign nations, and for obstructing the FBI's effort to recover them. That case was dismissed. And now a lawyer who worked on it is now facing 20 years in federal prison for emailing herself the final report about it. So let's bring back Xander and Miles to discuss this. I think my favorite part of this is what she called the file, the bundt cake recipe.
Who among us doesn't secretly name our files as bundt cake recipe? I'd rather have the bundt cake recipe, than some DOJ files. Actually, sorry, caveat. These are the Jack Smith files, so I'd rather have those than a bundt cake. But I got to agree with you, Maritza, that this is the type of thing that is normally handled internally and not with charges and a prison sentence. In fact, let me go further than that. If they are charging her and threatening her with prison time over this, I can tell you Donald Trump's kids probably are in the same situation. I'm pretty sure Jared and Ivanka sent things to their personal Gmails. I think there was evidence of that in the first term, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's actually a lot of people from the first Trump administration who got dinged sending stuff that was this type of document. This wasn't classified. This information, my understanding, it wasn't secret or top secret. It was what's called for official use only, an unclassified document that basically says, hey, don't take this off of government servers. If they're going to prosecute her for that, there's a whole lot of people from the first Trump administration who send FOUO stuff to their personal emails, and oftentimes for a legitimate reason. Sometimes it's folks saying, the only way I can get it printed at the hotel to give to the cabinet secretary or the so-and-so is I got to send it to this email. I mean, like, things like that happen all the time in government. I get that these were sensitive files, but it's very weird how hard the administration has come down. This seems to be a lot less about her sending an FOUO document to her Gmail and a lot more about them wanting to make sure that the things in those files don't see the light of day.
Yeah. I mean, it's an offense to America, right? Like, this country was founded to avoid political persecution, essentially. I mean, we have other things in the Bill of Rights, but a lot of it is about how a fair justice system should work. Yeah, there's the free speech thing that these guys also ignore. It's not like they're paying attention to the other stuff, but a lot of it is about how a fair justice system would work. And we are turning back the clock to, a system that favors the friends of who's in power and punishes those that stand against them. And this is just like another chapter in that book.
I just think, if only she had put her bundt cake recipe in a Signal chat with, our top our top leaders, our top military leaders. If only she would have done that, then it would have been okay.
Don't forget to include the editor of The Atlantic. You have to include the editor of The Atlantic.
And Jeffrey Goldberg. If we would have put the bundt cake recipe in a Signal chat with Jeffrey Goldberg and Pete Hegseth, I think it would have been fine. It would have been in the clear.
And to be clear for everyone, the information Pete Hegseth put inside that Signal chat, that was classified.
Right.
That was real criminal conduct. This is not. Anyway, let's roll into our next one. I'm just going to get upset.
Right.
I'm just going to get upset if I keep thinking about this.
Well, again, props for the bundt cake recipe. I mean, that's really creative. I would have done, a file one, but that's, bundt cake recipe. It's going to be, I don't know, the name of my
She's going to have a lot of people defending her. She's going to be okay. And if she's not, we're coming to her defense because this is heavy-handed. This is insane.
I'm looking at our chat. Agent number 99 says, or put the documents in a bundt cake next time.
Oh, like a nail file.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
She says like nail files.
I am good. Like, oh, I could go really off the rails here. I won't. Otherwise, Mercedes won't let me do
We'll
this
channel
again.
Mercedes.
So,
We'll
well,
channel
yeah,
Mercedes.
like,
Back on track.
but I'm thinking of the elf on the shelf memes and what they've transpired into with bunt cakes. But I'm gonna stop there. Okay, so our second story, Raul Castro. Okay. Our next story, we're going to stay in Florida, folks, but we're going to go from Fort Pierce to Miami because yesterday the Department of Justice unsealed an indictment against 94-year-old Raul Castro for an incident that dates back to the 1990s, in which the Cuban Air Force shot down 2 small planes operated by an American nonprofit in disputed airspace. Okay. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche personally flew to Miami to announce this indictment. Let's listen.
Well, we indict men outside of this country all the time, and there's all kinds of different ways that we get them here. The reason why we indict somebody is because we want them here to face justice in front of a jury of their peers. So, how we go about doing justice in front of a jury of their peers. So, how we go about doing that obviously depends on the circumstances in the case, and I'm not going to go beyond that. But we expect that we didn't indict. This isn't a show indictment. This is an indictment because we expect that there was a warrant issued for his arrest. So we expect that he will show up here by his own will or by another way and go to.
Okay, a couple of things there. Notice he didn't say, he said this isn't a show indictment. He didn't say this isn't a seashell indictment. That's a different joke for another case. But the line
You're on it today.
Really,
You're on it today.
Roots is getting real loose now that mom's not home.
Mom's not here. Although I saw in the chat, Mercedes, I see you. I saw
her pop up.
She's hovering. She's hovering.
She's supposed to be off.
The line that should stop people cold here is that when he said that the United States expects Castro to show up here by his own will or by another way.
Right.
What does that remind you of? Because I feel like I've seen that movie before, you guys. It's not a throwaway here. It's a direct echo of what happened in Venezuela 5 months ago. Because in January, U.S. Delta Force operators conducted military strikes on Caracas and extracted sitting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from his own country based on a U.S. domestic drug indictment. Not an international arrest warrant, not an ICC referral, a U.S. grand jury indictment enforced by U.S. military force against the head of state of another country. To be clear, that violates international law, and the UN Charter prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity of any state. UN watchdogs here called Maduro's extraction a violation of international law, and multiple countries, including allies and adversaries, raise the legality of it at the United Nations. So what do you think, guys? I do need to say, though, there is an exception to this. Remember the Honduran president? Because he was indicted and charged, and then guess what? He was pardoned. So there seems to be a couple of different rule books.
Well, you have
here
to display total and complete fealty. I think that's what Raul Castro has failed to do. But look, you're right, Maritza. I mean, we have to see this for what it is. A very obvious warning sign that this administration is preparing to take military action in Cuba. And, by the way that they've brought these charges, how they've signaled it, they seem to be implying there's going to be a special forces raid into Cuba to take that leader out of the country, and then to try to do what they did with Venezuela, is use the leaderless, the rudderless aspect of the regime as leverage to get someone they want into the position. This is not how the United States of America conducts foreign policy. This is how a thuggish autocracy acts, and it's doing extraordinary damage to our long-term security. Who is to say now that our adversaries won't do the same thing to U.S. officials and just decide, we should go kidnap that Assistant Secretary of State and charge them and tell the United States, why don't you give us something we want? and we'll release your assistant secretary of state, or we'll release your vice president. I mean, really, are we into hostage taking now of foreign officials? That seems to be the policy of the United States.
Yeah, who are not our adversaries at this point? Like, who can trust us? Weren't we threatening to take Greenland 6 months ago at this point? I mean, I wouldn't say Europe's our adversaries, but wouldn't the entire world be nervous we would behave like this whenever it suits us? It seems to be there's no rules. And if there are no rules other than what suits us in any given moment, why would you ever partner with us? Like, the costs that we are going to bear by behaving like this as a nation are incalculable. Because why would you ever trust any handshake agreements, any sort of norms, we're the biggest seat at the table at the UN. These are our rules. We created that organization. We chair it. And so it's just, the long-term damage here. We have a lot of work to do to restore the trust of the world after this.
Well, and again, I think back to the night when the president put out on Truth Social that an entire civilization will be obliterated that night, which constitutes a war crime just to threaten it. So at what point are we going to say, aren't we worried about someone coming in and doing this to our leader? I mean, like, what is happening? What is happening? All the norms have gone away. And like you said, who's going to trust us and who's going to just go on and make good faith deals when, like you said, we're threatening to take over Greenland? And that's kind of why, when the president was in China meeting with Xi Jinping and he said, "Oh, I don't talk about Taiwan." Well, no wonder. Why is he going to talk to him about Taiwan when he wants to do the same thing to Greenland?
Yeah, you are really starting to see it's like hemispheric domination handshake agreement between Russia, China, and America. I mean, I don't know if that is what's happening, but it has it's this feeling you have as you watch these three powers interact with each other and kind of the moves they're making in their hemispheres.
There's a story I want to jump to, and we can, Maritza, talk a little bit about it on the back end, but I want to bring our guest in because we have a guest who has, I'm told, a hard stop in a few minutes, and I don't want to miss him. And I want to take the next couple of minutes. We have the incredible Norm Eisen with us today, Ambassador Norm Eisen, who runs, among other things, Democracy Defenders Fund and The Contrarian on Substack. Norm, do we have you with us?
Oh, wait.
I got
him. Add him to the
I got him. I'm adding him to the stage. It's all right.
Mercedes is gone, so we gotta just we're working together here.
Where's my selection for 4 people? How do I get
there?
We
go.
All right.
Is with us.
Tech mastery. Hey, gang. Thank you for welcoming me.
Oh, it's great to have you. Look, I know you're on a tight schedule, but we wanted to bring you in on something very important. We wanted to do it earlier in the week, but schedules got crazy among all of us. And that is, you have been out there very aggressively on the Trump slush fund, this weaponization fund that we're going to talk about more in a little bit. Catch us up. What have you guys been doing at Democracy Defenders Fund? What are you thinking about doing on this front? How do we hold the administration accountable?
Thanks, Miles, and everyone for having me do a quick drop by. We filed the very first legal objection within minutes of the slush fund being announced, explaining that no, it's not constitutional or lawful to sue yourself, then to drop that case and to help yourself to $1.8 billion to fund convicted cop assaulters and other January 6th insurrectionists. We've never seen a corruption scandal of this kind. We represented on the first legal move 93 former members of Congress, and we're just getting started. There is going to be an absolute wave of action to stop this. So stay tuned.
Well, Norm, I don't want to bury the lead. We have a member of Defiance.org that wanted to send you a special message. And Xander and Megan, I don't know if we have that clip.
I can find it. if we don't have that clip, I'll go get it right now. Stay tuned. Give Norm one more.
Norm, I have a question.
Go
I have a
ahead.
question while he's looking for that clip, because when we were talking about this, I remember very vividly when President Biden was talking about student loan forgiveness, and we heard all of the people saying, no, you can't do that. That's our taxpayer money and it's unconstitutional. And I'm wondering where those folks are now, talking about sending $1.8 billion to J6ers. Not to mention, I mean, we should say there was some pushback in the Senate today with some Republican members, but do you think that's going to stick?
Well, remains to be seen. You'll never lose money betting against the members of the president's party standing up to him. That being said, this is such an outrageous scandal. It's the worst act of corruption in the history of the American presidency. The political consequences for going along with it are devastating. And you saw that, according to media reports, as dozens of senators, Republican senators, confronted Todd Blanche today. You're seeing it as we do our work with the confrontations in the courts. So I think that between the court of law and the court of public opinion, and with the wonderful support, of course, of Defiance.org, we are going to be able to achieve some traction and stop this terrible slush fund, $1.8 billion corrupt larceny against the American people. All of us and the rest of our fellow Americans are paying for this, and I don't think they're going to stand it.
Norm, you brought us to a perfect segue. Now I'm ready to play that video we had for you. Give me 1 second here.
Hello, Team Defiance. Ken Gilbert here from Alexandria, Virginia. On behalf of all of the membership of Defiance.org, I am pleased and proud to announce that we are making a $10,000 donation to the Democracy Defenders Fund to fight against Trump's weaponization slush fund.
Let's go, Ken.
Well, thank you, Ken, and we thank the whole Defiance community for this, and we will put every penny of it to use in our campaign to stop this terrible assault on the American people, on the Constitution and laws, and just on common decency and common sense. We can't fund these insurrectionists and cop assaulters to do it all over again. So we will fight back.
Norm, is there any way when you win this case to create a precedence for other nonsense? Like, it doesn't have to specifically be this, but just the rest of the nonsense that these guys are doing, so we don't have to keep fighting these freaking battles with these guys.
I'll just add one last point before I run off to do yet another case. In our over 300 legal cases and matters, we have been creating those precedents, and each one builds on the next, and we point to those successes when we go back to court and fight for what's decent and right. Thanks to you, we can do that. I'm so honored to be in the fight with all of you and all the Defiance.org community. We love the financial support, the moral support, and your very loud battle in the court of public opinion to complement what we're doing in the courts of law. Speaking of which, I'm going to run off.
Go get it
on another one of our cases.
All right. Thank you. Ambassador Norm Eisen, everyone. Fantastic to support them. I got to say to our viewers who are used to us announcing actions on Wednesdays, this has been a week where I think we announced actions on Monday, actions on Tuesday, actions on Wednesday. And today, because of the urgency of this issue, Xander and I had been talking and we said, you know, we have got to support the folks who are bringing legal action against this slush fund. Now, I don't want to get ahead of other things that Norm and team might do at Democracy Defenders Fund, but I'm very confident in their ability to hold this administration accountable. Remember, Norm and team have got a number of constitutional lawsuits against this administration, including one that the Supreme Court might decide as soon as next week. I think Norm's going to win this one. And I'll just say, Maritza and Xander, I'm thrilled that we can support those efforts as a community. This is where it happens. This is how we keep them accountable, is in the courts of law, rather than just sitting here and saying, oh, shucks, it's terrible he's doing that. Let's just tweet about it. No, we're going to do something about it. We're going to sue their pants off in federal court, and we're going to stop this from happening.
Here's something. Go ahead. Go ahead, Xander.
No. Go ahead.
This is what happens when you've got three people on here. Everyone's polite. Everyone's taking turns. I usually just talk over Xander, and then everything's fine.
Yeah, I know. You guys have that frenemy thing, but I'm going to try to come in and be the moderating voice here. So my co-host, who I also have a frenemy thing with, former Senator John Tester, he had sitting lawmakers tell him, like, hey, we don't like what's going on, but we're waiting for the courts to step up and do something, which is not how it's supposed to be, folks. I mean, Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the authority to have oversight on the executive branch. However, this is a way that will happen, is when people file lawsuits and when they take it to court, and we rely on our judicial system and the process. So, yeah.
By the way, gang, if you like doing things on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, go get 3 more of your friends to join the Defiance. Join us at defiance.org. If we quadruple in size, we can do something every day of the week. It'll be great. We'll keep this pace up. I don't think everyone has a good time every time we bring someone like Norm on stage and let them know we're moving some money towards them and we're getting in the fight with them. So yeah, write that down on your to-do list today. Get 3 friends to join defiance.org, and we can make this a daily thing. It doesn't have to be.
So do you think we should kind of give some more information about this fund,
Let's
Miles?
do it.
You want me to dig into it a little bit more? Okay.
Yeah, because look, Norm's team is not the only team bringing legal action here. I mean, it's going to be a dog pile, but go for it. Tell the folks who else is firing back right now.
Okay, so 2 of the officers who physically defended the United States Capitol on January 6th, the U.S. Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn and D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer Daniel Hodges, they filed suit also against this administration. And we want to play a little clip of Harry talking about this.
Why did you feel like you had to file this lawsuit?
Well, just listening to you just say that, suing to block $1.776 billion payment to, I wouldn't even say defendants, I would say terrorists, insurrectionists, and people responsible for one of the darkest days in American history. It is crazy. Why do I have to sue? Because this is what this administration is all about. It's about rewarding bad players. January 20th last year, when Donald Trump was inaugurated, he forgave the insurrectionists for what they did to us, what they did to this country. He forgave them. And just yesterday, they just announced that they are going to reward them for their efforts on January 6th.
So, I mean, I think the footage from that day needs to be played on repeat over and over and over, because people seem to have forgotten what happened that day. So many people, I see them talking about, tours and they were just let in and all of these things. And you see someone like Harry Dunn get up, and I mean, these officers, they have trauma. They have trauma from that day, and some lost their lives. So Harry and Officer Daniel Hodges, they're suing to block disbursement of what the DOJ is officially calling the Anti-Weaponization Fund. This fund, like Harry said in that clip, worth $1.776 billion of taxpayer money, notice 1776 in there. And it is being framed by this administration as compensation for individuals who were, quote, weaponized against by the federal government. So in plain English, January 6th defendants, the very same people who attacked Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges. And in the complaint filed, officers Dunn and Hodges call the fund, quote, the most brazen act of presidential corruption this century. And they described what it actually is, quote, a slush fund to finance the insurrectionists and paramilitary groups that commit violence in his name being Donald Trump. So as a reminder, this whole settlement is from Trump's own $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS, the so-called sue and settle maneuver, where Trump sued an agency that he oversees, and his own DOJ chose not to defend the case. The legal pressure is not the only pressure, though, on the fund, because CBS News confirmed that Senate Republicans have postponed today's vote on the entire reconciliation package, that very package that this $1.776 billion fund was supposed to ride into law on. And the reason is because partially two of their own senators, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and John Kennedy of Louisiana, emerged from a 2-hour meeting with acting Attorney General Todd Blanche this afternoon, and they just said the votes simply are not there. Cassidy, the man who was recently defeated in his primary due to Trump's support for his opponent, told MS Now that he sees, quote, no legal precedent for the fund. We have seen other Republican we've seen other Republican senators speak out, and I was sharing some posts from X with you guys earlier. I mean, there was one where they said, hey, the entire majority is in shambles, basically, because there's so much disagreement about this, and it's really hard for some of these lawmakers to just get behind this. Now, Donald Trump is apparently saying, like, hey, I'm not going to sign anything unless it includes my demands here. We'll see if they crack. What do you guys think?
X-Man.
I was, you talked about the people who said January 6th was just a tour around the Capitol and whatnot. Even I, who feel pretty grounded in what happened there, am floored when I see the footage. It's always more violent than I remember. It's always more intense than I remember. It is. I don't think you're wrong. There probably is a project there. In the same way we're making sure the Epstein files stay in the forefront of people's minds and see exactly what Trump's connection was to that man and the predator nature in which he behaved. There probably is something to think about in terms of keeping January 6th front and center. I know another thing I often forget about, sometimes I go re-listen to Trump's speech that day, and it is like not unclearly a call to arms. I think people think maybe he gave a great campaign speech and people got hyped up. He gave them direction on what to do and sent them in there. So I think
Rudy Giuliani did the same. I remember hearing the specific words he used, and I mean, they were, the next day we heard so many people say, we need to bring down the temperature, we need to tone down the rhetoric, and you listen to the words used in those speeches before all that happened. Sorry to interrupt you, Xander.
No. I was just foot stopping your idea. Like, there is probably actually, I don't know if you intended to float this idea, but there is a project to make sure that day remains front and center and people do see that footage and that speech more often, because it is important.
Yeah, look, it's easily the most corrupt presidential act we've ever seen, the creation of this thing. But I worry that that's not enough to get Republicans to balk. Yeah, they're mad. Yeah, there's a lot of reporting about how they're going to delay the budget bill and they're going to stomp their feet. But you know what? They're probably going to get some modest concessions from DOJ, where the Justice Department is going to say, fine, we won't give the money to anyone who beat up a cop. Fine, we'll make a couple of other minor concessions, and then they'll let them go forward with it, or some version of it. That's what I worry about happening. And this thing's ultimately going to be decided in the courts. I do not have any confidence in the Republican caucus showing spine. All they want is the talking point to take back home and to say, it's not as bad as you think, or I got them to back down, I got them to fix it, even if it doesn't happen that way. So I don't have a lot of faith that this pushback in the Senate is going to result in any sort of accountability. Remember, this is the U.S. Senate that spent this week hyper-focused on the ballroom instead of Iran,
same guys,
instead of inflation, same guys, same lack of courage. But look, we are going to go win this thing in the courts. And in the worst case scenario, I'm going to tell folks right now, a future administration is not going to honor this ridiculous settlement agreement that Donald Trump has appended to the document that says he can never be investigated ever again. In fact, if anything, and I said this to Xander last night, Donald Trump has just put the biggest, reddest bullseye you've ever seen on his taxes by seeking this bizarre addendum that he can never be investigated again for his taxes. He's basically saying there's something to see in there. You should go take a look. Do you want to know where the crimes are? They're inside my taxes. He just gave us the treasure map for his criminal activity, and bet your ass we're going to follow it to the X. That's my promise.
Oh man, there's just so much. There's just so much there. I was thinking about this though. I saw that somebody asked about Mike Pence in the chat, like, is Mike Pence going to apply for this fund? And John Tester was saying maybe he should, because he was in the Capitol that day, right? He was in hiding and in his office. But I was thinking about it, Miles. Jim Acosta said maybe he should apply for this fund, and maybe you should too, because haven't you been a victim of the government being weaponized against you?
Oh yeah,
I've
had Defiance.org come up.
I should apply on behalf of the whole organization. I should do what Mike Lindell did. Mike Lindell put a marker out there the other day. He said, my businesses have suffered $400 million in losses because of the retribution. I was thinking, Mike Lindell, you're going to lay claim to 1/4 of the entire weaponization fund?
Strong move.
Yeah, I think we've suffered at least $1 billion in damages here at Defiance.org. So we should put that money to good use. They should award it to us. But, I had earlier today, Maritza, multiple folks from different outlets, CNN and others, messaging and saying, yeah, are you going to apply given the president's retribution against you? And I can show real economic harm to my family from all of that. But obviously, folks who do that, it's going to be for show. But there is an interesting caveat here, and I wish we still had Norm Eisen on, because if enough people who have been on the receiving end of Trump's revenge and the improper actions of the federal government file for benefits under this fund and are denied, while a bunch of MAGA folks are approved, there is a cause of action there to go take them to court for yet another reason on top of the existing lawsuits against this administration. So I wouldn't be surprised if those conversations are being had right now among folks like me. Hey, go file your claim. You're not going to get it, but that's going to display how biased the process actually is and allow you to sue the U.S. federal government for improperly administering this already illegal fund. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Maybe I've just talked myself into putting in a filing.
Yeah,
good.
I think
you're not busy enough. Let's do it.
We untangled that together. We unpacked that together. I'm going to file suit though, because it sounds like you two went to dinner last night without me and didn't even FaceTime me in. Like, talk about.
Is that Norm? We got to FaceTime you in.
Yahtzee.
For the launch. I wasn't ready for that.
Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Miles.
I just want to say, like, something that's striking to me whenever I see that footage is just, and honestly, like, makes me sad, is to the extent that a lot of desperate Americans have been lied to by this guy. So many people put their hopes for the future for good reason. I'm not saying it's good reason to put it in him, but for good reason. They were feeling desperate. They were feeling an economy that was turning against them. They were losing hope things would ever change. In some cases, depending on where they're living, their towns, manufacturing industries have been shipped overseas. There's lots, we've seen Washington be corrupted increasingly more and more by corporate money and unlimited funds that the wealthy can donate to their campaigns. There were a lot of reasons for Americans to turn against the establishment. And so many of them, for lack of options in a lot of cases, turned to this freaking guy who just lied to them over and over again about his agenda and what he would do for them and how he cared about them and their problems. And to a certain extent, I do feel empathy for people who put their faith and trust in a movement that said it was America first, that said it was going to stop forever wars, that said a lot of really enticing things. And if you're just an everyday person that's struggling and you don't have the time to look into, the feasibility of tariffing the world or all these things, it just shows that people were, there's so many people out there that had a lack of hope and poured it into this terrible guy who got them in trouble, who has been awful for the country, has done nothing to help their lives. You know, the jobs weren't reshored, costs have skyrocketed. And I just hope that, you know, one of the lessons we learn out of this, on top of, you know, the need for accountability at the top and to rein in the executive office and all that, is that we need to better serve the American people and make sure they have options so they get looped in, they don't get roped into this cult like they did this time around. Make sure this time around they do have real champions that are willing to solve their problems.
We sure saw that with so many of the people who went before courtrooms and said, hey, you know, I was just following along and I believed him and I regret it. And we saw that from a lot of those defendants. And I think that, yeah, there is something sad about that. And then I also think about people today in this moment on Thursday, May 21st, who are doing everything right. They're not committing crimes. They're going to work. They're getting their kids to school. They're taking care of their parents. They're part of their communities, and they can't make it. They can't make the bills. And we're going to give some of these folks who attacked police officers extra money right now. Like, what incentive is there? And what incentive is being provided to people to say, hey, like, just stick with it, do the right thing, be kind. Like, this is insane.
Well, what I will note for everyone is there is a big piece of this that changed since the reporting about the fund broke a week ago, because when the news first came out on this, it was that the funds were going to be awarded and there would be no transparency into who received money and how much money they received. Now, the Justice Department realized clearly that wasn't going to hold up. And now they are saying that there will be a ledger of the payments that go out. The Justice Department was kind of vague on whether that guarantees the names will come out, but it sounds like at least Congress is going to get the names, which means that they will leak. So all of that to say, there's a big warning for the people who decide to take this money. Convicted criminals, Jan 6ers, folks who tried to overturn the 2020 election. I'm just saying this as an American to you. Be careful about whether to go accept those funds, because your names are going to be plastered out there and people are mad. And that's something that folks are going to need to take into consideration if they want to accept corrupt funds from this administration. There is going to be accountability no matter what. And if for some reason the Justice Department tries to find a way to hide those names, believe me, our friends, investigative reporters like Maritza, they'll get the names and they'll make it clear who decided to avail themselves of your taxpayer dollars, via Donald Trump. So that's something I think that folks need to be tracking on, is we're going to make these people famous who decide to go get rich off of criminal activity if that's where this money goes.
There is one more component to this, and I have to shout out my friend Liz Lawyer Oyer, because she pointed this out in a video today, that there's also a line in there that would allow lawmakers to file for some of this money, specifically if they were surveilled. You remember that whole fund that they were trying to get passed because of, the investigations that came right after January 6th. So there's a little line in there too. And she basically said that this is the DOJ trying to get these lawmakers on board. Like, hey, we'll pay you too. So there's just a lot. There is a lot to this that does not smell right.
That's the democracy our founding fathers envisioned. Hey, we'll pay you too to look the other way. Yeah, what do we need to do about
this is the first. Oh, go ahead, Xander.
I was kind of messing around with Norm, where I'm saying, can we set a precedent to just knocking off nonsense more broadly? But seriously, with executive power coming out of this, say we do get a better Congress that's motivated to rein in executive power writ large. I mean, Miles, I know you've thought a lot about this as a libertarian, right? The concern about too much executive power. What changes do we need to make when we have this next Congress or this next administration?
I mean, look, it's going to be harder than folks think, because we also have the courts we have to deal with. I mean, the Supreme Court somewhere in the next 2 or 3 weeks is going to make a decision about whether the president of the United States can unilaterally fire the heads of independent commissions that Congress has set up. If they do that, you are going to hear a lot of anger across the country. You're going to hear a lot of disapprobation from legal scholars, because we're talking about places like the FTC and the FEC, where Congress says, as the people's representatives, here's how we're going to design those agencies, and we're going to limit the ability of the president of the United States to get rid of people. Remember, president of the United States, once a law is passed, isn't allowed to just do anything to enforce it. Yes, his role is to execute the laws, but to execute the laws. So if Congress says you can, you have to spend this money this way, and you can't spend this money this way, and you can fire this person, but not this person, that's the law. That's what the House voted on, the Senate voted on, and a previous president signed into law. And so if that decision happens, there's going to be a lot of work when a reform Congress comes in, because they're also going to have to say, how do we undo some of these decisions of the courts that are taking away our powers as a Congress? So it gets more complicated. But there is, Xander, to your question, going to need to be sweeping efforts to reform the balance of power. And I actually think you're going to see some Republicans open to it, but not until they're on the other side of the equation. Not until they're afraid of a Democrat president operating the way that Donald Trump is operating. And then you're going to see these folks run scared with their tails between their legs and saying, please, please help us. Please rein it in. Please be more benevolent. Don't use your powers for revenge. And we're going to have an adult in the Oval Office who says, I feel like getting back at these guys, but I'm not. This is the moment that we can reach some grand bargain to curtail the power of the executive. And it will be a long time coming when that happens.
We need another healer in chief.
That's right. We do. That's the elegant way to put it. Maritza's like, I can say this in 1.5 seconds.
I can. Well, I mean, it's more like I don't want to talk over Xander anymore. I feel bad. I keep interrupting Xander.
You're fine. We're doing great, gang.
Please, you should have been at this dinner last night, Marie. It's all I did was interrupt Xander. It's just like this program. You missed.
You're gonna just
great sushi.
Listen.
Such good sushi.
Maritza, do we have who's trying to Defiance today, or are we going straight to viewer questions?
Well, here's the thing. So there is a line in there, but somebody put, I think that we already did this. So I just don't know. Why don't you guys drive the show?
All right, we'll go viewer questions. Igor, our good friend Igor, has a question. Igor says, do you know of groups who track activity of Proud Boys Oath Keepers beyond SPLC who might be a bit distracted with their own legal issues at the moment? In other words, is anyone going to notice if known leaders of those groups take deliveries of cash and start buying guns?
Boy, that's a great question. Short answer, Igor, is yes. There are a number of other organizations out there that track domestic extremist groups and their activity and do so lawfully, like the Southern Poverty Law Center. But I also would say don't count the SPLC out on this front, Igor, because despite the legal case, I think they are doubling down on their work. And I have heard that a number of their funders who have stuck with them have said, no, we're not going to be scared off by this. This is more important than ever that we make sure that these domestic extremist groups do not arm themselves and violate the rights of their fellow Americans in the process. And, so I would say remain focused on supporting those groups out there that are doing that work. But Igor, you get to a key question there, which is, are these funds, whether it's this slush fund or another, going to be used to empower these groups? Because remember, this isn't the only time this administration has used this mechanism. They've gone to multiple defendants like Mike Flynn, who served in the first administration, and reached settlement agreements with them. Mark my words, if the slush fund gets held up in court, they'll just start cutting individual deals with individual defendants all up and down the stack. That is the concern here, and that may include Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, convicted criminals who, some of which boasted that they had a cache of weapons stored outside the Capitol on January 6th, and that if things had taken more of a turn, they would have gotten them. They were planning, in their words, to basically spark a civil war in this country. So, yeah, I don't think those folks deserve my taxpayer dollars, but I also didn't think they deserved pardons. They deserved jail time.
Let me give you all a rural perspective here, because I live in Western Montana. And, just not very far away is the Idaho border. And we have a lot of militia groups out here. And I have people who send me tips here and there every once in a while about some of these groups being formed. And it is scary. But people, I think the key is, if you live in any of these communities and you hear things like that, you have to tell people about them. And, out here, we really rely, especially in my career as a journalist, I rely on people sending me tips, and I rely on people trusting me with that information. So it's something I'm definitely concerned about, and that those groups are growing or could be growing very quietly out, in places like Montana and Idaho. But we just gotta, we gotta stay vigilant.
One thing I'll add, I picked up shooting a year and a half ago, and I'm already winning some of those tournaments, partially because I can run and there's running involved. And so as much as the militias sound scary, I found that the folks that are most drawn to them don't do enough endurance training and other things. And so if that helps.
The Gravy SEALs, you mean?
If the Gravy SEAls are not moving quite fearfully, I would say, in a way that's experience. So if that gives you any sort of sense of calm, I wanted to share that perspective.
This is the point in the program where folks start to connect the dots, that I have been giving Maritza the tips about a militia guy I know, Xander Schultz, to try to take him down, trying to get that expose written, radicalized Xander. Well, there is a whole denial that's happening in this administration that, anyone in any of these far right movements ever intended anything, anything bad. And the rewriting of history, I think, is going to put us in a difficult spot down the road, because there are a number of these cases that have been dropped or forgiven of some real bad folks. And we've already seen J6ers who were pardoned go sexually abuse children, go engage in assassination plots against, Hakeem Jeffries, the most senior Democrat in Congress. There was an assassination plot against him from one of the J6ers, and on down the list. So we're talking about, I'm not saying it's all of them, but a lot of these folks are really dangerous individuals who we will not have heard the last from. Let me jump to another question on there here. Kayleen asks, has anyone checked out the Leaving MAGA website? They are helping those who want out. I heard Rick Logis speak, and he is truly sorry for what he fell for. He is one of the founders of it. Xander, I think you and Rick connected. I think we've been in touch with the Leaving MAGA folks about ways that we might be able to support their effort.
Not only did we connect, he is going to be a guest of ours. I'm trying to find the exact day when he's coming on with us. I think it's as early as next week. I've got to find it, but yes, we're connected with them, and it's like the perfect timing to bring that up. So we talked earlier about all the people that fell for this charade. What do we need to do? Part one, we need trusted messengers of theirs to expose that it is in fact a charade and a grift. And then we need to migrate them to a healthier civic home. And Mr. Logis has been doing an incredible job doing that as a trusted person. Like, it builds a lot of trust when someone can say, hey, I fell for it. Right? Not you're so silly. Look how dumb you are for falling for it. As I have been known to speak to my cousins at times. That's not the best bridge building strategy.
Yeah.
It takes people like him who have built real trust in that space to kind of build the bridge back to being more civically engaged in healthy ways.
I think we talked about this morning. So on Grounded this morning, we had actor Ben McKenzie on, who just made this film called Everyone Is Lying to You for Money, and it's all about crypto. And for some of the people who fell into, some scams, he said that, frankly, it wasn't even like the realization of financial loss right away that killed them. It was the embarrassment. Like, how did I fall for this? And we talked about that crossover, and there has to be an off ramp. And that's part of threading this needle. There has to be an off ramp for people, because I do think, how many times have we seen a video? I just think of that one at the gas station from a few weeks ago. I think it was on MS Now, where she's like, yeah, I voted for Donald Trump 3 times, and I'm stupid, and I know I am. And she was really very, very honest and emotional about that. And I think that is a key piece to this is there needs to be that off ramp, like you said, Xander.
100%. Look, I'm yet to meet someone I don't understand when I sit with them for long enough. In this whole journey that I've been on, I've been going to churches and I've gone on hunting trips. I've really tried to spend as much time as I can with the different cohorts of the MAGA coalition. I'm yet to find people I don't understand. I hear them. Oftentimes it's a single issue that they're concerned with that's being unheard or unmet. And, they made a bet. They made a bet partially against the system they didn't trust, and partially because their issue is being spoken to. And so I think we just need to continue having faith in people, faith in Americans. I think that was the saddest thing about this movement, is not just thinking Trump is a grifter, which I think many people knew before he ran for office, but thinking there's this toxicity amongst our countrymen and our peers. And, in my experience, and I know maybe this won't ring true for everyone, but in my experience, the vast majority of people I've encountered aren't toxic. They're living a particular life. Sometimes it's a lot different than ours, and it's hard to imagine that sometimes. And they have needs that are unmet. And so, let's just keep viewing those as people to win over instead of people to win against.
So, Xander, I'm going to need you to go to Minnesota and sit down with Mike Lindell.
Okay. Okay. What's going on, Mike?
Look, if he's willing to take some of that likely cash he's going to get from the fund and donate it to Defiance, we'll bring him onto the program. We'll bring him onto the program.
There's
we'll
certainly grifters at the top. There's
That's
grifters
right.
at the top.
That's right.
For sure.
Well,
yeah.
Let me take a final question here before we jump, which is Sada asks, how can we draw attention to the harm that was done by ending USAID and the Ebola outbreak? We are all being put in danger by this administration. I was just on Nicole Wallace yesterday in New York City chatting with Dr. Vin Gupta, who is someone who's been out there a lot talking about this. And I think it's unequivocal that shutting down USAID has indeed, as Sada says, put us all in danger, because USAID would use money in these situations to go try to contain outbreaks. That matters. We'd way rather fight Ebola over there than over here. I promise you that. You don't want Ebola in Chicago or Los Angeles or New York or Middle America. You'd much rather we take care of the problem in Nigeria or Uganda. Those cuts have had a very severe impact. But in answer to your question, what do we do about it? 2 things. We need to highlight that, because when, not if, when USAID is restored, we need to be able to better make the case to people of why that organization existed. And look, as a conservative, I'll say, I know there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in government. Trust me, I've seen it. Loads of it. Billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. But foreign aid programs are pretty lean. They're a teeny tiny fraction. They're less than 1% of the federal budget. That's not where you need to go cut if you're looking for cuts. So that's piece number 1. It's important to get these stories out there so that this doesn't happen to us again. But second, and more immediately, Sada, what I would say is this. People in states across the country, governors in states across the country, should be more prepared for a possible pandemic than they have been in the past. Because in the past, they've counted on the federal government will swoop in and solve it. Well, listen, folks, you lived COVID. Did the federal government fix it for you? No. And smart governors and forward-thinking governors had a better handle on it than the ones who sat on their hands and hoped the Trump administration would save their people from dying. Now, I know COVID is political. I know people have different views of whether the mask mandates are right or not. But tell me, if Ebola hit this country, do you want the Trump administration to be responsible for protecting your life? Or would you rather almost anyone else be responsible than Donald Trump? And that's why states and the governors and the public health authorities in the states need to step up and be prepared for the possibility that the federal government, if this happens again, will whiff completely.
Here's the problem in a state like mine in Montana. So many laws were enacted after COVID that not only gut health departments, but also take away any kind of authority from local health departments so that they don't even have the tools that they used to have. So this is something that's concerned me for a very, very long time. And yeah, I think there are plenty of conversations to be had about COVID-19. But my goodness, when we think about how many people died during COVID-19, and that was nothing compared to Ebola. We need to have some kind of measures in place because people warned about a pandemic like COVID-19 and nobody listened. And guess what? They're warning about another one that's going to happen. And we need to listen and we need to take this seriously. And we need to say, hey, you know what? If this is happening there, it can happen anywhere. Not to mention the World Cup is about to come to the US next month.
Yeah.
We're going to have people traveling from all over the world like we do every single day anyway. But I think this is a very, very important conversation. And I think people need to be paying a lot of attention to it.
Miles, I think you touched on maybe one of the most important lessons from the last 10 years is that politicians were wrapping a lot of our programs in like this moral imperative instead of explaining what we got from our investment. Like if you invest in a social safety net, you get less crime and your town is less dangerous and neighborhoods are nicer. And so there's not premiums to go to certain schools because there's all these other schools that are dangerous. When you invest in health programs across the world, your likelihood of a pandemic reaching you is lower. You have influence in cheaper ways. And so when you need favors across the world, you don't have to threaten military force as our current president does when he wants something done. And so I think it's like it's out of all the lessons to be learned, which there's numerous. That's one of the big ones. Is I'm going to say we as specifically the Democratic Party wrapped everything we did in a moral imperative, and you were a bad person if you were against it, and didn't take the time to talk about the ROI of investing in all of our systems, investing in the foreign aid, et cetera. And I think our leaders can do a much, much better job of that because we do get a lot from those investments. We do get a lot from those investments, both domestically and internationally, and we should make that case more often.
Well, there's a simple way that I used to put it in government, which was project to protect. People who say, America first, bring it all here to home. Well, you're not defending yourself best if you're defending yourself from the crouch right at the point at which the attacker can hit you. You're much better if you're defending yourself far out on the perimeter. You project power to protect yourself and to protect your people. That has been U.S. policy since World War II. That is the sort of Washington consensus, as they used to call it, that Donald Trump has ripped to shreds and has put Americans in danger, whether it's terrorist attacks, whether it is potential pandemics. And we're going to spend a lot of years trying to clean up the mess, folks. But that in part starts here and on the Grounded podcast with our friend Maritza Georgiou, but here at defiance.org. I want to say to folks, as you head into your evening, if you're a member of defiance.org, be proud about not just all the things that happened this week, but just today. You are now going to be part directly of funding efforts to try to shut down this slush fund. Today, actually, you, again, it's not some secret billionaire that's funding us and our efforts. It is you. You invested in shutting down the slush fund, and we're thrilled to be able to partner with Democracy Defenders Fund and Norm Eisen to make that happen. Stay tuned. I think you'll see additional announcements from them on that front in the very near future. But in the meantime, join us tomorrow for our favorite episode of the week after Wednesdays and after days Maritza's on with us. So, Fridays. Yeah, I think that leaves Monday just completely out to dry.
Sorry, Monday. Sorry.
Days of the week is Friday on this program, where we will award the weekly Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award. We will talk about the MAGA losses of the week, and we will recap some of the amazing actions in a real whiplash week here at Defiance.org of ways we've offered up people to jump in and fight back against the corruption. What else you guys got? Anything else to flag for the radar?
I do have two things. Go ahead, Xander.
No. I was just going to be silly. Nothing.
Well, I'm going to be silly too. First of all, somebody in the chat says that they hope I get invited to dinner next time. Me too. Thank you, Chris. Me too. But second of all, we did chat when you were out, Miles, that it's not really fair that these people get like a nice pair of shoes for shitty behavior. Like how do like our heroes get a good pair of shoes? I love shoes.
Yeah.
So I'm
I'm
glad you said that. Yeah, we officially earlier this week, I think this was on Monday. I guess that's our least favorite episode next week. I think we announced we are no longer sending the award winners the actual shoes. But one of the reasons was, yours is a very good reason, which is let's not give them nice shoes. Maybe they will wear them. One of the reasons was our Soulmate Award winners kept returning the shoes. The first one, the very first winner, did that almost right away. CNN's Scott Jennings, who loves to lick Donald Trump's boots, apparently did not want to wear a pair of his own. And so those were sent back and credited to our account for another Soulmate Award winner who was a member of Congress who also sent the shoes back. And so we decided, we're going through a lot of effort to get these to them. I guess they don't feel honored or flattered that we're calling out their supplication to Donald Trump. Maybe it's better if we just award it virtually. And here was our idea, Marie. It says every time we give out the award, we're going to encourage people live as they're watching to go into the comments and the DMs of that person and not say things that are threatening or harassing, but to let them know that they won the award. And
congratulations.
We're going to start to on Fridays, give them language that they can copy and paste. Congratulations. You won this week's Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award for being unyielding in your support of Donald Trump and his efforts to undermine our constitutional republic, et cetera, et cetera. And make sure that we flood their comments and posts on social media with those messages. That's better than a pair of shoes because they can't send those back.
Mm-hmm. And if you do need to get out things that are extra mean, you can say it in our comments. I've seen a few comments here. Scott Jennings is a bitch. Chris McKinney says. There's someone called him a huge little bitch. So it's okay if you need to get it out. We can do it together as a community.
If you need to get it out, you can do it here. That's a really good point. That's a good point.
You know who's really good at that? John Tester. John Tester can throw out some name calling. Let me tell you, we got to get him on. We just have him like read the comments. That would be great.
Yeah,
I'm in a whole episode.
Defiance, the Defiant Award, though, a positive award. You and I talked about that, Marie. It's just like who's getting. We have the Defiant moments of the week or whatnot. This should be a cool award. I don't know if it's a flag. We got to figure out what it is.
Well, we can continue. We can continue the Defiant Voices Award. Remember, our first honoree was Robert De Niro, and we got this incredible. This incredible trophy that you got made, Xander, which was like this glass microphone on top of a thing. That was really cool. We got to award more Defiant Voice awards.
Yeah, maybe that's a monthly award.
I think.
Although would that water down?
Have an upcoming occasion for it too. I don't know. I'm thinking about our thing next week. Maybe. Anyway, we'll talk offline. Before I expose more of our upcoming projects. We almost did. We're 10 minutes over. Listen, a huge thanks to Maritza for being with us. She is our best friend of the program. If you are not following Grounded on Substack and her podcast with Senator John Tester, you're missing out, folks. You're missing out. You didn't get to see that awesome interview with Ben McKenzie. It means you didn't get to see Pete Buttigieg. It means you missed all of the very interesting guests they've had over the past few weeks. Make sure to subscribe to Grounded. And in the meantime, if you haven't checked out our announcement on defiance.org about the Trump Epstein bookmobile, please do. It's right there on the landing page. Just go to defiance.org. If you know how to use backslashes, then fine, do that and type in bookmobile. But otherwise, we will see you, friends, tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern at our usual time for our Friday episode. Thank you, everyone. And as always, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. We'll talk to you soon.
See you.